today we're going to talk about who qualifies for an EB-5 visa, what qualifications you need to have, and how you can move forward. I'm an attorney. I'm also a licensed spinner broker. Nothing I'm saying here is legal advice. It's just for your education and to be discussed with your professionals that you're working with your immigration attorney and with your finner broker. So who does qualify for the EB-5 investor visa? The greatest part about the EB-5 investor visa is that it's one of the most inclusive visa types. Almost anyone can qualify for EB-5 as long as you have the right investment amount, as long as you have the financials to invest. Today it's at least $800,000. That's going to change on January 1st, 2027. And as long as you invest in a qualifying project. What's a qualifying project? That's something that a licensed investment broker like myself can help you with. But when it comes to EB-5 personal qualifications, when people ask me who qualifies, it's literally anyone who has lawful money to invest. Why? Because there's no education requirement. There's no background requirement. Any country is eligible for EB-5. Even if there's temporary bans, you can still file your EB-5 petition. So it's not country specific. Literally, a citizen of any country is fundamentally eligible for EB-5. You do not need to speak English. You do not need to have a special professional background. You can have a certain level of education or no level of education. You do not have to have investment experience. So that's why a lot of international students utilize the EB-5 program. Their parents donate the funds, they invest, and they get the green card themselves. They don't have to be professional investors. The funds don't have to be earned by you, right? So it doesn't have to be funds you earned. It could be funds that were gifted to you or funds that you borrowed to invest. So they do have to be your funds at the time you're making the EB-5 investment, but they don't have to be earned by you. It doesn't have to be funds that are outside of the United States. So you could use your funds that are here in the United States. Maybe you were working on an H-1B visa, an E-2 visa. Maybe you have an uncle or a relative in the United States who wants to help you, and they're willing to donate the funds to you so you can make the EB-5 investment, and they made that money in the US, that's fine. So that's what I'm saying. EB-5 is so broad. Literally, a person of any age, you can be a minor. So minors can still invest and file the petition themselves. So their parents would have to, or guardians would have to sign the financial instruments for them, but the gift can be made to the minor and the minor can invest. So there's no age restriction, no background requirement, no educational requirement, no language requirement. No restriction about inside or outside of the United States. You can apply from outside of the United States. I've had clients who applied who have never visited the US before, or you could be inside of the United States and potentially even do a concurrent adjustment later. So it's a super, super all-inclusive visa. And what I can say, other than the obvious, having access to that investment amount, being able to afford that investment. Other than that, when it comes to background qualifications, it's very inclusive. And this is why EB-5 often becomes a solution for people who do not qualify for anything else, right? So if you're moving to the United States, you're a married couple, you're not going to get married in the United States. So no family, you don't have any US relatives, you don't plan to work for a company maybe, or you don't want to be restricted to having a job sponsorship. This puts the control in your hands. With EB-5, you can self-petition as long as you made this qualifying investment. So often I see young families who are moving and they want to raise their kids here in the United States, so they're utilizing the EB-5 program. I see a lot of international students. So students who are here in American universities and they know they want to stay and live and work in the United States later, their parents usually provide the financial gift. And with that gift, the international student is able to invest and apply and get their own green card. If it's done early enough, sometimes the student already has their green card before they start university. If they're doing this while they're at university, sometimes by the time they're done, they have their green card or they even are on the road to get their citizenship. So great for international students. It's great for other visa holders actually who want a permanent solution. So if you hold a non-immigrant visa like an H-1B, a TN, an E3 from Australia, or very commonly E2 or L1 visas. So you have been here in the United States, either working or operating a business, and that granted you a non-immigrant long-term visa, but there's no direct path from that visa for you to become a green card holder. Either you don't qualify for an EB-1A or EB-1C, or your employer is not planning to sponsor you, or maybe you had a business and an E2 and you no longer want to operate this business, or maybe you're okay operating the business, but your kids are aging out, right? Your kids are going to turn 21, so they're not going to be included in the family petition. And now you're thinking, wait a minute, I want to have a permanent solution, a permanent status for my family and myself in the United States, and with a path to citizenship. That's when EB-5 comes in, right? So a lot of those who don't qualify for another type of green card program can self-petition by investing. So again, E2 holders whose kids are aging out or who no longer want to run a business, L1 visa holders, H1B visa holders, and of course, other types of TN and so on. So what do you need to qualify? You will need to show that the funds you're investing were acquired and sourced lawfully. So if it's a gift, you have to show that the donor has acquired those funds lawfully and transferred them to you lawfully. If you're borrowing the money, if you're borrowing it from a bank, it's presumed to be lawful. If you're borrowing the money from an individual or a company, you still have to show that that company or individual sourced those funds lawfully. If you earned it, again, you need to show the lawful source of path, and that's something you will work with an immigration attorney to determine. And then the next thing is that money has to go in an EB-5 qualifying project. Today, EB-5 is a whole big industry, and there are actually dozens of projects that come out every year through organizations called regional centers. These are private organizations, but they're licensed to work with the EB-5 program. So there are literally dozens and dozens of EB-5 projects that an investor can choose from, right? And many of those projects have already submitted their documentation to immigration and were qualified, so immigration confirmed that that specific project meets the requirements of the program. So you have to show your lawful source of funds, and then you have to invest in one of these projects that will qualify, basically a project that will create 10 full-time jobs for its investors. Again, dozens of projects to choose from. Mostly when we're looking at the project, we of course look at whether or not it meets the immigration requirements, but we also look at capital preservation, right? So the financial risks are very different. These projects are in different industries. They're offering investors different terms, so it's a private choice. But essentially today there's dozens of projects to choose from. And once an investor chooses a suitable project, makes the investment, they can file their petition for their initial green card. It takes about a year to 2 years on average for most individuals to get their green card. I expect that processing times will slow down under this administration, and right now there's just an influx of petitions, so maybe that timeline is going to come and be more like 2 to 3 years. But times, sometimes it gets much shorter, in other years it gets longer. And what are some of the other questions that people ask me for qualifications? English comes up a lot. There is no English requirement to get a green card, and no English requirement to get a green card through EB-5. So if an investor does not speak English and they had maybe a professional assisting them in selecting a project, they don't have to, and again, they can use a translator if they have an interview, which happens abroad. When you are in the United States, you don't usually have an interview, it's waived. But if you have an interview, you can use a translator, or that interview is going to be in your language, in your country. So you can answer how you pick the project and answer the lawful source of funds questions. Of course, EB-5 is not a magic solution for other disqualifying factors. So if you have criminal history that makes you ineligible for a green card, makes you inadmissible, EB-5 is not going to solve for that. This is not a magic eraser, right? So if you're otherwise ineligible for immigration, either due to criminal history, or if you're in the United States and you have accumulated unlawful presence and you're not in an active status, EB-5 is not going to solve for that, except if the unlawful presence was less than 180 days. So there is a 245K protection that is eligible for EB-5 investors. So those who have fallen out of lawful status and it has been less than 180 days, they can essentially repair it if they file an EB-5 petition and an adjustment, as long as the unlawful presence was less than 180 days. If it's more than 180 days, unfortunately, you have accumulated unlawful presence. So you can invest and file your EB-5 petition, but you will not be able to adjust in the United States. You have to depart. If you depart and do consular processing, you may trigger a bar. So it is definitely not a magic eraser. But when it comes to just generally who can qualify in terms of background, language, skill set, it's very free. The main requirement is lawful source of funds and jobs. What other things do I sometimes hear from clients? Do DACA children qualify, or DACA holders qualify? Usually not. So this is not a solution for a situation where you are not in a lawful status in the United States, right? Or I'm sorry, you're not in an active lawful status in the United States. So if you're you've been temporarily paroled, or you're in DACA, or you have lost an active immigrant status, even if you're here lawfully, like if you're an asylum seeker, but your last non-immigrant active status ended, again, it's not going to provide that solution for the change of status, right? You can file, like if you're an asylum seeker and you don't have an active status, you can still file for EB-5, but you would have to depart the country. Visa. So it is not a solution for inadmissibility. It is, if you don't have an active status, you will not be eligible to adjust in the United States unless it's been less than 180 days of inactive underlying status. So, you do need to be eligible, so no disqualifying criminal background. If you're adjusting in the United States instead of doing consular processing, you do need to have an active non-immigrant status that allows you to adjust, so it cannot be an ESTA. Unless it's been less than 180 days since your last active status. So that's one exception. And if you are eligible for a green card and you just don't have an active status in the United States, you can file for EB-5 and you can seek your immigrant visa from abroad. So those are definitely options. And today I see a lot of countries utilizing EB-5, so it just depends on who has the information and who kind of has the need. So I'm actually seeing an influx of Canadian citizens right now. Many of them want to retire in the United States. They're coming for the lifestyle, warmer climate, especially here to Florida. Arizona is also another popular destination for Canadians. Mexican nationals, again, either because they want to raise their kids here or they see business opportunities here. Obviously, a lot of Asian countries, from China, Vietnam, Taiwan. We see a lot of investors utilizing the EB-5 program from there. European countries. So people who are seeking either future opportunities, economic opportunities, Sometimes it's a lifestyle choice. You know, I have a client from Europe who is in his 80s and he wanted to retire. This was actually a little bit surprising for me because usually when people are from a certain place, they want to retire there, especially when they've lived most of their life here. But he particularly likes a state in the United States. Despite the fact that he does not speak very fluent English, this is where he wanted to retire. This is where he wanted to spend his retirement years. So sometimes it's a lifestyle choice. A lot of times it's opportunities for children, either education in school or college. And who qualifies with one investment? So one investment gets the investor's spouse, and their children under 21 years old permanent residency. So through one investment, you can bring your entire immediate family. If you're the investor, it's going to be your spouse and your children under 21. Right? You cannot include your parents, aunts and uncles. If you're a solo investor, if you're a single person, then it's just going to be you through one investment. But definitely one investment can go a long way with advanced planning. Sometimes I have families that I will work with who have 3 children, and they all want to come and study in the United States in universities. So we also know there's a high probability they're going to want to stay and work in the United States. So if there's some advanced planning done on the parent side, then the mother could apply, be the investor, and the 3 children would be included as long as the petitions are filed before they turn 21, and that also will give the ability then for the mother to move and stay with her kids as they relocate here. So definitely your immediate family are included if you are married and have children. So it's a good idea to think about these things in advance, plan it out. Remember, no educational qualification, no background qualification, just, you know, clean criminal history that doesn't disqualify you, and clean funds. I hope this was helpful, and please send me your questions for future sessions, but definitely if you're considering this program, if there are other programs that didn't work for you, if you're here on TPS and your TPS is getting canceled, if you're here on a work visa and that's not going to get extended, definitely consider EB-5, do a consultation with an experienced EB-5 attorney. So most immigration attorneys have not worked with the EB-5 program, so I highly recommend, if you're going to do this consultation, seek a consultation with an attorney who works with the program, because unfortunately in our legal community, I have noticed that if immigration attorneys themselves are not very familiar with the program because it's more niche, they don't know how to give you quality information, right? The reality is EB-5 has one of the highest average approval rates of any immigration program because the requirements are so straightforward. It's a certain investment amount, certain amount of jobs. So the approval rates historically have been between 85 and 95% on investor petition. So that's extremely, extremely, extremely high for an immigration program. So the program works great. Over 100,000 individuals receive their green cards through this program. But keep in mind, in the grand scheme of immigration, it is still very niche. There are maybe 1.5 million people who move to the United States every year. Only about 10,000 move through EB-5. So in the grand scheme of things, when you're reaching out to immigration attorneys, please check that they know this program before you consult on the details. Obviously, if you need recommendations, let me know. And if you have any other questions, let me know. I'm happy to help. And of course, if you do decide that this program is for you and you're looking for professional licensed guidance through the process of selecting a project, that's what I'm here for. I'm a licensed spinner broker, former immigration attorney. I'm happy to assist investors through the project selection. Good luck.